E ngā iwi, e ngā reo, e ngā kaorangaranga maha. Ana e nō rā te wānanga Aotearoa e mihi kau ana ki a koutou. Koutou anō e kaupapa ana ki tēnei kaupapa, koutou anō e arohana ki ngā iwi putano i te motu. Koutou nā ringa raupā e tautoko ana tēnei kaupapa ko te Whakapahuhu Kahukura, ana e nō rā te mihi atu ki a koutou. E miharo pai ana mātou o tēnei wānanga kia tū hei awhi atu ki a koutou, kia tū hei manaaki i te iwi putano i tēnei whenua Aotearoa. E kore mutu te mihi kia rātou mā nā tini aitua, rātou mā kua wheturangitia. Ko rātou kia rātou, ko mātou kia mātou. Huri nō kia tātou katoa, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. It's my pleasure on behalf of Te Wānanga Aotearoa to welcome you to this series of He Whakapahuhu Kahukura that looks at literacy and numeracy across Aotearoa as it's presented by our institution. Te Wānanga Aotearoa has a proud history of serving communities across both New Zealand and the rest of the world. We take this duty and this obligation with all seriousness. We recognise that we stand to make a difference in the lives of people, and we intend to do that in the most powerful ways we possibly can. We continue to be grateful for the support and respect we receive from the communities across this country. We hope that our little contribution will help enrich the lives of others and transform whānau in positive ways. We wish you well in your endeavours with literacy and numeracy, and hope that in your own way that you will contribute to making a significant difference to levels of inequity in this country, and that you will support learners across the country to achieve their fullest potential. We wish you all the very, very best in your endeavours and continue to be humbled by your contributions. Kia ora mai anō tātou. Literacy and numeracy plays a huge and significant part in the success of students in their learning journeys. Te Wānanga Aotearoa has recognised this and seeks to offer literacy and numeracy embedded within its programs of education to support learners in achieving their fullest potential. Unique to Te Wānanga Aotearoa, we recognise that besides reading, writing, listening and speaking, other forms of literacy are essential to our students' success. For that reason, we've added two elements to the ideas of functional literacy. We have included the idea of cultural literacy that recognises the culture that our students come from, and we base and embed our literacy within a cultural context that is warm, affirming and nurturing. As well as this, we also recognise that many of our students come from challenged backgrounds, having been disadvantaged by education in the past. We seek through our literacy and numeracy agendas to ensure that critical literacy forms part of our students' learning journey. Critical literacy asks our students to think about levels of inequity in lives of our people, to ask themselves questions around how did this happen and how can we change this so that the riches of this country can be spread across a larger and more divergent group. It is a much wider literacy agenda than what we see in other institutions. However, in accordance with the kaupapa of this institution, we seek to care and to make contributions of consequence. So we gladly widen our literacy agenda. These ideas are encapsulated in our strategy called He Whakapahuhu Kahukura. He Whakapahuhu Kahukura is part of a whakatauki or proverb that came from Te Aroa. It refers to people who make snap judgments and don't think about things before they act. Te Wānanga Aotearoa in its infancy was in this position as regards its literacy strategy, when we considered not including elements of culture or critical thinking in our approach. We took some time, a lot more time than people would have liked us to have taken, and we thought about these other two elements, and at the end of our deliberations we decided that they were essential elements in the students' success. So He Whakapahuhu Kahukura teaches us not to act quickly, but to take a discerned, thoughtful view of where things are at. We did this, and we're very proud of our results. We believe our literacy strategy that seeks to equip our students with functional literacy and numeracy, and also embed that in a cultural paradigm, and as well as that, ensure that critical thinking is part of our literacy agenda, is an essential, successful ingredient for our strategy. We hope in your work moving forward that you will not forget the essential three elements and include them in your delivery and your interactions with our people. Again, we wish you all the success in your work. We are grateful for your endeavours and know that each day and each way we all make a contribution of consequence. We are committed to whānau transformation through education, and the work you're doing in literacy and numeracy supports that. On behalf of the directors of this institution, the council of this institution, and all of the students and kaimahi across Aotearoa, we wish you all the very, very best in your work. Mauri ora.
Kia ora, ko Hinarangi Ngātai tōku ingoa, ko Ngāti Rangi me Ngāti Rangi Nui o ku iwi, ko Ngā Tūkairangi me Pirirākau o ku hapu, ko Mātātua me Takitimu o ku waka, ko Mauao te maunga, ko Tauranga te moana, no Tauranga moana ahau, no reira tēnā rā tātou katoa. Kia ora, my name is Hinarangi and I am the Project Manager for He Whakapahuhu Kahukura, the Literacy Numeracy Strategy here at Te Wānanga o Aotearoa. He Whakapahuhu Kahukura is the how and what of literacy and numeracy embedding in our level 1 to 3 vocational programs at Te Wānanga o Aotearoa. And we are embedding literacy and numeracy at 3 different levels: organisation, curriculum and staffing, with the ultimate goal of improving or increasing the literacy and numeracy levels of our tauira while they are enrolled in a level 1 to 3 vocational program. Our work in He Whakapahuhu Kahukura has involved the reviewing of our organisation's policies and processes to ensure that they support the embedding of literacy and numeracy, to embed literacy and numeracy aspects in our curriculum documents and our program resources, and to train our kaiako in how to embed literacy and numeracy aspects in their teaching practice.
It's a really critical initiative for the wānanga. It's absolutely essential that our tauira are leaving here with appropriate literacy and numeracy levels in order to participate in not just the economy but in society generally. So government has made it quite clear that funding for tertiary education is going to be very much tied to tangible social and economic outcomes, and we want our people to be part of that success story.
So from my perspective, what's exciting about this and what it looks like is that we've taken something that government sort of made us do and turned it into something that's real for us and that aligns with our kaupapa, that aligns with who we are and with the education that we offer, and that is much bigger than the very narrow definition of literacy and numeracy that they conceived of when they asked us to do this mahi.
I think the benefits are twofold. We obviously will be having a large number of our kaiako, our teachers, who are going to be upskilled in embedding literacy and numeracy, and this is going to be useful for them obviously as members of the organisation, but also in their own professional development. And also our tauira are going to be very, very greatly advantaged by having explicit literacy and numeracy embedded within their programs, and this is going to enhance their own education and knowledge as they go out into the workforce and into society.
So at the moment, being part of the steering committee, I really am there still to provide continuity and advice, particularly around how we report back to the Tertiary Education Commission for what we're doing. So what's exciting to me about everything that's happened is the leadership that we've had in this team. The wonderful group of people have come together to really make a difference in the organisation through the use of the tools that we were given, but also the development and the directions that they've taken it. So to me it's like we are able to include the reality of what it means to have critical and cultural literacies included in how we deliver training to our kaiako.
I work in the student support area, so a lot of our focus is on assisting tauira to participate effectively in their learning, and that requires us to address any issues that can be a barrier to learning effectively. Obviously, a lot of our tauira are coming in with literacy and numeracy needs, so it makes sense for student support to keep a watching brief over the literacy and numeracy embedding, so that if there are any particular issues that are coming out of that for our tauira, we are able to identify those and provide appropriate support.
My role in the organisation is I am the manager of the student registry, and our role includes looking after our student management systems, wherein we are basically the source of or the repository of information for our tauira, as well as for the programs that we deliver and for the classes that our kaiako deliver. And in this steering committee, we're responsible for ensuring that the qualification that the kaiako enrolled on for them to gain the National Certificate in Adult Literacy and Numeracy program are recorded in our system, and that the results will be sent to NZQA and for them to eventually gain the national certificate. At the same time, we also provide information to the management as well as to the government when it comes to which of our programs are embedded with literacy and numeracy, as well as the usage of the assessment tool that the government requires us to use.
It's been interesting trying to understand the relationship of student support to the literacy and numeracy project. There doesn't always seem to be an immediate link, but as the project's gone on and the work has continued, some issues for students have come out that have a student support focus, and we've had to identify those and provide some support, which we probably wouldn't have realised if we hadn't had the opportunity to with the Literacy and Numeracy project.
I see as the biggest benefit for our ākai is that they are able to navigate the world confidently, both hopefully in reo and to be culturally equipped, but also that they can show their ability to navigate and be strong in the world in literacy and numeracy.
This project enabled us to receive funding from the government, and that funding will help us to be able to develop the resources, upskill our kaiako or upgrade their qualification in order to be able to cater to the literacy and numeracy needs of our tauira.
Something that we've come to recognise is that a deficit of literacy and numeracy, which often is through no fault of the tauira coming in, it's part of the system that they've experienced, and you could argue that the mainstream education systems let them down. That deficiency in literacy and numeracy is disabling for tauira, and so we should be looking at finding mainstream government funding that's going to address that disablement. And so maybe it's time for us to look at expanding our definition of disability and using that funding to meet the needs of those tauira.
The benefits of this project to the organisation is that, well, there are twofold, for the tauira as well as for the kaiako. In this project, we're able to require the kaiako to enroll on a program that will give them the qualification that they need in delivering the literacy and numeracy needs of our tauira. And at the same time, for our tauira, we are ensured that all the programs under this project are embedded with the literacy and numeracy, which makes sure that all the activities are catered to their needs, to their learning needs.
We do need to be very careful that we don't stigmatise tauira coming into the wānanga if they have a literacy or numeracy deficit. We need to frame the support for them in a positive way, and it's really critical for us to be there and to awhi them as positively as possible and to avoid stigma. And so that's going to take a lot of thoughtful planning and work, but I'm sure we can do it.
I first came to Te Wananga o Aotearoa about 3 years ago, and one of my first roles was to help set up the capability plan to apply for the funding to the Tertiary Education Commission to start the project. So that was quite a really interesting challenge because one, I was new to the organisation, and two, the background to this was the government really wanting to build capability in literacy and numeracy across New Zealand, but probably not really understanding at all how that could happen for a wānanga.
At times it's been challenging for us to see a link between student support and the literacy and numeracy project, but as the work's carried on and the tauira have been engaging with it, some issues have come up for us that we've identified that we can see need to be addressed with student support around literacy and numeracy. So one of the things that we have been looking at is the possibility of literacy and numeracy deficit actually being recognised as a disability, and at the moment student support provide support workers to assist students with disabilities. So if we can make a case that a literacy and numeracy deficit is a disability, then we may be able to supply workers to support students with their literacy and their numeracy. So this is quite an exciting area for us that we're exploring. And this would never have occurred if we hadn't had the opportunity with the embedding of the literacy and numeracy project over the last year.
Embedding for me is about ensuring that our programs or the qualifications that we deliver to our tauira cover their literacy and numeracy needs, and that we are able to cater to that. So we ensure that kayako have the capabilities, the skills, and the qualification to be able to do that.
For me, the biggest benefit I think has been in kayako, what they've received through the training and now the qualification that they can gather, and then the spin-off for them about how they approach teaching and learning. And those are the stories that I love to hear about people who are excited about what they're doing, who are re-energised and who feel better equipped because we all are really focused on success for our konga, and we haven't always known how to do it. So to me, that's been the biggest thing that we've gained from it.
Because we are a wānanga characterised by teaching, learning and research underpinned by āhuatanga and tikanga Māori, we have incorporated culturally responsive ways of embedding to ensure that what we are doing aligns with our kaupapa, exemplifies who we are as a wānanga and who we are ultimately here to serve as a wānanga, which is our tauira. The work that we are doing in He Whakapahuhu Kahukura, to me, is about 4 different areas. The first one is acknowledgement. This work has reminded us that we need to acknowledge the life experience, the knowledge and the literacies that our tauira bring with them into the classroom, and to use that knowing as a platform for teaching them something new by reading the world through their world. The second part is awareness. The work that we have done in He Whakapahuhu Kahukura has made us more aware as an organisation of the literacy and numeracy needs of our tauira through the use of diagnostic assessment tools. It has also made us more aware of the literacy and numeracy demands of our programs through mapping our resources and our texts that we give our tauira against the Learning Progressions Framework, so that we can see whether our tauira need extra support in reading, writing, listening, speaking or numeracy, or where we need to include more strategies or more support in our curriculum to help our tauira with functional literacy, as well as cultural and critical literacy aspects. Third key area is capability. Our organisation is now more capable in knowing what to do to meet the literacy and numeracy needs of our tauira and also the literacy and numeracy demands of our program resources through implementing strategies in our teaching practice and our curriculum development in order to increase the literacy and numeracy skills of our tauira. And the fourth key area, and the most important, is empowerment for our tauira, to give them the tools that they need to become active, confident and competent participants in learning, in work and everyday life. The kaupapa of Te Wānanga o Aotearoa is all about making contributions of consequence and whānau transformation through education. And the work that we have been doing in He Whakapahuhu Kahukura forms part of this kaupapa and is now embedded in the work that we do here in our organisation in order to support our tauira to transform themselves through education. We hope that this DVD resource will help you to implement strategies into your teaching in order to increase the literacy and numeracy levels of your tauira. We wish you well in your studies. Ngā mihi, tēnā rā tātou katoa.
Tēnā rā koutou katoa. I'm going to talk about how and why the wānanga is involved in embedding literacy and numeracy within our courses. In 1996, an International Adult Literacy Survey, or the IELTS survey, was conducted with the 26 or so OECD countries around the world. The survey revealed that within New Zealand, almost 50% of our adult population were not able to cope with the literacy and numeracy demands within a modern technological society. The New Zealand government responded by creating a project called Learning for Living. In this project, we went to the adults within the education sector and in the workforce and gave them the literacy and numeracy support that they needed. The wānanga has been involved in this project since 2009, and we now offer the National Certificate in Adult Literacy and Numeracy Education. Here at the wānanga, we concentrate on 4 aspects of literacy, and we talk about it as a whakapapa. So what is the oldest literacy we have? What is our matamua? Well, we say it is listening, because we start from the womb. And then we learn how to speak, and then we learn how to read, and then we learn how to write. And those are the 4 aspects of literacy that we concentrate on within the wānanga. Tēnā rā koutou katoa.
Hi, my name is Marie, and I'm here to talk about how it is that we're doing this kind of work at the wānanga. In 1996 and again in 2006, some studies were conducted internationally, and these showed that many people in New Zealand were functioning below the levels that experts decided were needed to function in a modern society. And so the government put in a lot of money and a lot of expertise into trying to raise the literacy and numeracy abilities of people in the population. This work has really come out of the TEC, and the way that it has been done is by identifying a number of literacy and numeracy strands. These are particular aspects of communication which are needed for modern society. And the way that people see these things is that within listening and speaking, reading and writing, and various forms of numeracy, people believe that the population should be able to operate at a number of steps of competency. The competencies steps are known as koru, which comes from the Maori word meaning the little emerging frond of a fern. People don't make leaps from one step to another in literacy or numeracy. People learn in slow ways. And what the TEC has done is to identify what could be expected of an adult learner at these various steps. And so any teaching that is done to try and help people to move from one step to a higher step. So when you deal with any one individual, they will have a unique profile and have different steps of ability at the different standards. In order to talk about literacy, we need to have a very wide open view of it. Historically, a couple of hundred years ago, a person was literate if they could read. Later on, they needed to be able to read and to write. And mostly this was done by churchmen, and so the Bible was the main source of reading, and writing was possibly done to get messages from one person to another. In a modern society, that is a totally inadequate view, because literacy is seen as what happens in any kind of social practice. So whenever you have a group of people getting together, they may be talking about the newspapers or the books or the films they've seen. And so the listening and speaking is a social activity and will refer to all of these kinds of reading. In a modern society, people will be killed if they can't read traffic signs. They might not write traffic signs, but if they're drivers, they have to give signals. Any kind of signal where the meaning is agreed by people becomes part of a text. Within Maori culture, there's an even wider meaning for literacy, because here communication based on an oral tradition includes things like the carvings and the tattoos, and so the meaning of literacy within a Maori context is even wider than in a modern society. And at the Wānanga, the intention is to include all of these forms of literacy. Most important, perhaps, in modern society is that people need to have a critical view when they read. They need to have some understanding that texts have meaning and purpose, and they need to be able to troubleshoot, to be able to understand the real meaning underneath any text. Before we're even born, it's believed that we're able to hear and to listen and to distinguish certain sounds. This is the early precursor to speaking, and it certainly is an aspect of listening. So when we talk about listening and speaking, these are two activities that human beings use to communicate. They learn it by growing up in a society where people speak to each other. The sounds that they make will depend on the languages spoken around them. In this way, we all develop particular parts of our throats to say certain things, but the sounds that you hear are the sounds that you'll make, and they will become the listening and speaking. When we have English second language people, they may find it difficult both to hear particular sounds, and they may find it difficult to make particular sounds. So in particular, English second language people find it hard to achieve the same steps of competence that are found by native English speakers. Correspondingly, if your home language is Māori, you will have particular sounds that come more easily to you than others. When you go to the next strand, which is reading, we're on the strand now that probably is the most significant in modern society. For our purposes, a text may be far more than simply some written material or a book. We include the movies as a text, we include audio tapes, we include written material. And in order to read, we need to decode. We need to be able to make sense of the symbols on a page and actually give them a sound. We need to be able to have vocabulary, words. If we're reading something in a modern book, there are many ways that the text is broken up or made officially easier, but if you don't know the system, it actually makes it harder. For example, bulleted points. A person doesn't know just because they move in society that bulleted points mean that the beginning of the sentence has a number of tails, all of which apply. And finally, reading critically means that you have to understand what's going on, but you also have to have a very real sense of the purpose of the material that you are reading. In the case of writing, people need to learn how to shape particular letters. In a computer age, some of us are now learning to keyboard them and not worry too much about what our writing looks like. But the fact is that if you want to write, you need to think about who you're writing for. And research around the world has shown that there are 3 stages that everybody goes through when they're writing. The one is that they plan and compose. They think about who they're writing for, and they plan it, they try it, and they revise it and edit it. And so writing doesn't happen without serious thinking going on. Spelling needs to be thought about. If we come now to actually teaching the various strands, the way that we do it is to think about which the learning progressions are and how these can be addressed. So if a person wants to have a larger vocabulary, the teacher must see to it that practice is given with vocabulary, with learning the meanings of words and giving people a chance to discuss it, to read it, possibly to write it. And by doing these various stages in a repetitive kind of way, the learning is fully absorbed and the person becomes literate. That is actually the koha, that is the gift that Kaioko give to their akonga. They make the text accessible. And they do that by using particular strategies, and these strategies can be found in all of the TEC booklets. More than half of the pages of each booklet are devoted to activities that will help our konga with their learning. In summary, I'd like to give you something that you can take away with you and use when you are trying to plan what to do with your learner. First of all, for listening and speaking, there's a yellow book. It has a CD at the back, and the CD might not be directly relevant for your particular course. However, if you take the ideas that are in that book, you can make your own little scripts, you can make your own MP3 texts if you want to, and use the ideas to improve the chances of your tauira, your akonga, learning that aspect of literacy. So that deals with both listening and speaking. For reading, there's a red book. And the red book has a multitude of ideas that you can use in your particular classroom. One of the ideas that isn't there is thinking up ways for your learners to decide if a statement is true or false, or maybe that they don't even know. That is a really powerful way of helping learners to be critical readers as well as increasing their vocabulary and comprehension. For writing, there's a blue book. And some of the ways that the guidebook, the keti, is presented actually use some of these ideas. When people are planning and composing, it's often useful to have a writing frame where you have the beginnings of your sentence. If you want someone to work or to write about what they did on holiday, last Monday these are ways of getting writing going. Give the first few words, people can discuss what happens next, and then have the confidence to write. Hi, I'm here to talk about numeracy. When talking about numeracy, we're talking about something that has a very ancient history. From the mists of time, we know that people counted things. They had 1 or 2 or 3 pebbles. They took 1 or 2 or 3 days to walk somewhere. And so there was a combination of the number and the measurement. 3 days walk away, 3 hours or 3 parts of a day. Those numbers in the early days were simply lines, 1 and 2 and 3. And nowadays, there is a different kind of symbolism used, which allows far more sophisticated things to happen. If you think about the letter E, it simply has a sound associated with it, E or E. But the number 3, just the mirror image of the E, has a completely different meaning. It means 3 identical things, or 3 things of the same kind usually. We have the letter 8. If we add 8 and 3, we get 11, which we write as 1 unit and 1 10. So we've got a particularly clever way of indicating a big number by the place that we put that number in when we write it down. We were able to add 3 plus 6 equals 9. Subtract 5 take away 3 equals 2. In real life, we would do it meaningfully. I've got $10, I spend $2, I have $8 left. Multiplication, 3 lots of 2. It's 2 and 2 addition and another 2 to get 6. So what we're doing is a repeated addition, and we have a special sign for that, the multiplication one. And division, if we have a pizza and we divide it in half, very easy, 1 over 2, and it's 50%, or 0.5 if we start using decimals and percentages. So, numbers today have operations associated with it and symbols to help us understand. Nowadays, that number system underpins everything to do with measurement and also everything to do with graphs. So the 3 aspects of numeracy that we have, also called the 3 strands, the first is making sense of number to solve problems. The second one is to measure and interpret shape and space. This is the one, measure and interpret shape and space, that has a lot to do with art, a lot to do with weaving. You have triangles and squares that get repeated at regular intervals. All of that is inside the measuring strand. And finally, one that was really developed hugely, only really took off during the time of the Second World War. And this is about statistics and graphs. The graphs are pictures that represent numbers of things happening. And all of the interpretation of graphs is part of modern numeracy. When working with numeracy, there are 4 key ideas. The one is that when we work with numeracy, we do it in a reasonable way. We're logical. 2 plus 2 plus 2 is the same as 3 lots of 2. The degree of precision, we make decisions about how accurately we want to measure something. If you're measuring a room for a carpet, you may say to yourself, well, it's about 5, no, that would be a large room, maybe about 3 meters. But the actual person who does the measurement would need to know that it was 320 centimeters. Precision is around being sensible with how many numbers you put down for purposes of making sense of it. Finally, the last key idea in numeracy is the use of algorithms. Every culture has worked out its own ways of doing calculations. So we learn particular ways of writing addition and subtraction and multiplication, and these may not be the same in all parts of the world. The way that we use calculators, which number we put first, these are all a sequence of steps that we agree on and that the computer or the calculator gives us the right answer. We have to know that what we calculate is reasonable. So, just revising, the 3 strands of numeracy, the one is about numbers, the second is about measurement and shapes, the third is about statistics. And whatever we do, it happens in a context. We don't just have numbers, we do calculations for a purpose. We understand what we're doing, we do it at a meaningful degree of precision, and we have procedures and sequences of steps in order to get the answers right.
I'm a contract tutor to Oka Business Solutions who deliver business courses in West Auckland and Newmarket on behalf of the Wānanga. I've been teaching the First Steps to Business program, and my class in Henderson comprises mostly of Pacific Islanders, but I do have a lot of Japanese and Indonesian students in Newmarket. In doing the numeracy and literacy course, I gave much thought to the fact that I actually have different people from different backgrounds, different cultures, different languages, who don't necessarily have English as a first language, and therefore they may have difficulty understanding my South African accent, and the fact that I sometimes get very excited about my topic that I'm discussing and I may talk too fast. After my second lesson, I approached both classes and said to them and asked them about how comfortable they were with what we were doing, and some of them mentioned that I get very excited, I talk too fast, and they find it difficult to understand me. I then made an agreement with them that if I got carried away, they were to put up their hand to slow me down, and therefore hopefully everybody would be happier. As part of the Numeracy and Literacy course, I attended workshop 4, and we worked on word mapping. And while doing this, I had my jiggy moment. I suddenly realized that words that I was using in my course could have a totally different meaning to the students that I was teaching because of their different cultures and backgrounds. And this in turn would probably cause confusion, and they would not understand the material properly that I was trying to share with them. I then decided to use the methodology that was shared with us in our workshop and go back to my students and to make sure that every one of them could understand the actual meaning of the word that or the topics that we were discussing and the context thereafter. I also encouraged my students to prepare for the weekly lessons by doing their reading at home. I would go to class at least a half an hour early to meet with those who wished to come early and to discuss anything that they weren't too sure about. As a result of this, we found that everybody got involved, whereas before you had some shy ones that would sit and keep quiet and wouldn't say much. But everybody got involved, we had more group discussions, and we felt that we had a better, more pleasant experience in doing it in that manner.
In 2010, I was a kaiako, and I was part of the training for literacy and numeracy for adults in New Zealand, which was delivered in Te Taitokero and Manukau. I wrote a most significant change story, which is about changes that happened with myself, my teaching practice, and how those changes changed my ākonga. Prior to doing the training, I knew it was important to develop my students' literacy and numeracy. As I was delivering my program, computing, I was always aware that there were new words, new things for my students to understand. But it wasn't until I did the literacy and numeracy training that I actually had the tools to help me implement this. So one of the biggest tools, most helpful tools, was the online assessment tool. Once I had this, I could actively assess my students where they were at and then work out strategies and activities to develop their literacy and numeracy within my class. At the end of the program, I was able to use the literacy and numeracy tool once again to assess their learning at the end and have some idea as to where they were and where they had come to. Prior to the training, I was doing this, but it was only happening in my mind and I wasn't documenting it. So the training has helped me in a big way in that I'm able now to document changes, work out strategies to help my students. One of the most significant changes was in one of my students who came to me from day one, told me, I'm done, I can't read, I can't spell, and I'll never ever pass this program, because up until then she had never passed anything. She also told me because she was illiterate in her own mind, that so was her son. I used the strategies I learned in literacy and numeracy training to give her confidence, to show her that she wasn't in fact as dumb as she thought, and at the end of semester A, she had actually achieved level 2 computing and was ready and actually eager to go on to level 3. At the end of last year, she completed level 3 also and was looking forward to a pathway for this year. That student was a really huge significant change for me in my class.
Kia ora, my name is Connie Huaki and I'm going to take you through the steps in how to create a reading assessment using the Literacy and Numeracy Assessment tool. First of all, we start off with the Google browser and you're going to type in Literacy and Numeracy for adults, and you're going to click on the home page for Literacy and Numeracy for adults. This is the mainframe home page for the National Centre of Literacy and Numeracy for Adults, where you will find a lot of resources not only for the assessment tool but in terms of literacy and numeracy in general and the learning progressions. Next, we are going to scroll down on the right hand side to where they have assessment tool quick links. Then we are going to scroll down again and we're going to click on Access the Assessment Tool Training Environment. There are two environments to the assessment tool. One is the blue screen, which is the training environment. We are going to work in this today as opposed to the live green environment. Next, we are going to click here to log in via ESAA. Please ensure to have your ESAA login details handy. First, you enter your user ID and your password. If you are having difficulties with logging in, please call the Sector Service Desk on 0800 422 599, or you may email them at sector.servicedesk@minedu.govt.nz. Click log in. This is the home page for the Literacy and Numeracy for Adults Assessment Tool Training Environment. We now click Create a Reading Assessment. We now need to name the assessment, which is your program code, followed by a dash, the semester and the year administering the assessment is next. So this stands for 2012 semester A, another dash, the first initial of your name, your first name, and then your surname, and whether it is a pre or post reading assessment is entered. The next step is to click on a snapshot assessment. Snapshot assessment is about 16 questions long. We click on no threshold, which allows the assessment to be adaptive, so it will adapt to how the students answer the questions. We then click save the assessment. Congratulations, you have successfully created a pre-reading assessment within the assessment tool. Next, we need to add more learners. And you will see your class brought up within the group name and the organisation. We click on the box that will select your whole class, then we select Save. Congratulations, 4 learners have now successfully been added to the assessment. We now scroll down on the right hand side to where it says Print Assessment Codes. We export as a PDF and open. These codes are now available to be printed and cut up and distributed to your learners. Once we have done that, we exit out of the assessment, scroll back up to the top of the page and click Activate. We return to the home page and there is your assessment that you have just created, ready to be administered with your tauira. Once we have finished that function, simply log out and your tauira will now enter their assessment codes here and click Login. Kia ora. Now we're going to look at how to mark an assessment that one of your tauira has completed. First of all, we click here to log in via ESAA. Enter your username and password. And click log on. The first step is to scroll down and find your assessment that you have created for your learners and click on Mark Assessment. Next, you need to find the learner that you are entering the data for and click Enter Data. Using the marking guide, enter the learner's results by clicking on the answer that they have submitted in their paper-based assessment, as follows. If they did not answer the question, click on No Answer. Once you have marked the assessment, click Save. And you will see that the result has been entered into the assessment tool results. Return now back to the home page. Click on Report. And you will be able to proceed using the assessment summary report to complete your interpreting the results template.
Kia ora and welcome to this segment on how to access Moodle. For those that do not have access to internet, we shall go in from the internet and through to Google. Type in TWOA and TWOA Moodle is where we will log in. Under username, put your username, which is generically known as your staff number, and also your password. login. On the top left-hand corner, under My Courses, is He Whakapahuhu Kahukura. And in here is everything that you will need to know about the program, along with activities and class lessons and course dates. First is some history on He Whakapahuhu Kahukura and the team. Useful web links, Crossword Creator website, Word Find Creator website, Te Arapiki Ako, Literacy and Numeracy for adults. The learning journals, which are the Te Pai Ako learning journals. Attitude to Literacy and Numeracy surveys, which you would have been informed of during your class lessons. The Literacy and Numeracy for Adults assessment tool. Assessment tool links and forums. Support services. Generic dates and activities, filled with activities. Kaiako Dat sharing section, again filled with activities. He Whakapahuhu Kahukura teaching guides, some whanaungatanga activities, and various other information aligned with He Whakapahuhu Kahukura.
And now as we leave this DVD, I wish you confidence and enjoyment as you use the ideas and create learning opportunities for your akonga, for your tauira. There are many resources available, both from your colleagues and the published world, and there are also a whole lot of resources on the internet. So thank you very much for your time and attention. Kia ora.